How does that work? Because you're breeding a lot of them, as you said, for family dogs with whom go out shooting, half a dozen times a year.
Yeah.
Then you said you give them an extra grilling, but what extra training are you having to put into them? Or are you very selective in who you sell them to?
Yeah, so if someone comes to me and says we're thinking about a cocker or a lab, I just say Labrador. They've got to come to me. If someone comes to me and they are over, that being ageist, but they're probably over 65, and they say, "Oh, we want a cocker," I'm like, only if it's a trained one. I mean, I've seen people come for lessons. Oh, these people sold my mother a dog. The mother turns up and she's got her walking stick. She's 75 and she's got a 1-year-old cocker and she's having trouble with it. You're kind of like, and she's, oh, but I had cockers years ago, and I'm like, yeah, but you didn't have a stick years ago. It's kind of we've got to be, and I'm pretty blunt to people and probably pretty rude to people, pretty blunt and pretty rude to people probably, but I don't see it as being rude. I just see it as being honest. So the first thing is with our Cocker Spaniels, we are breeding them to be as calm as possible. So we are really thinking about what we're breeding, and we have been for 10 plus generations. And, so if you're going to get a Cocker and you've got to think, who am I going to get it from and what purpose is it going to fulfill? If I'm going to get a Cocker Spaniel for winning a field trial, then go and get it off a guy who breeds for field trials, because that'd be awesome. But if you want a Cocker Spaniel that you want to be a calm, like family dog and might do a bit of shooting, then get it off someone who's breeding them to be calm family dogs who are going to do a bit of shooting. Not to someone who's got a family dog who they decide to use the latest champion dog or whatever, which is sort of seemingly what happens. Oh, he's got a great pedigree. I mean, do you know anything about those pedigrees? You ever been to a field trial? It's just a lack of, like everything else, I'm afraid, it's just sort of lack of knowledge. And it's a real shame because you see people ending up with in all sorts of trouble with these dogs that they just can't handle because they've just got the wrong dog. So we're trying to make them calmer. We're also, we are quite particular. Like if someone comes to us and goes, oh yeah, so I want a dog and this is where I live, I'll be like, sorry, you just don't have the setup for a young cocker. It's just not going to work. We had a really nice couple from Edinburgh come to see us, and both lovely people, smart people, good job, good attitude, good, like everything was lined up. They're like, oh, we live in a flat where we are looking to buy a house. I'm like, great, give me a shout when you bought a house with a decent garden, because until then I'm not selling you a dog. And I guess it's just I've got high standards, but because I've got a reputation for what I do, then I can have high standards. And I guess it goes back to people who are breeding dogs, and they have great intentions of only selling them to the best homes, and then they suddenly have got 5 puppies at 8-9 weeks old who are destroying their house, and they just want them out the door. And the answer is, well, they shouldn't have bred them in the first place, because you can't just, it's very selfish to breed a dog because you want one of them, because you got to think, well, who else is going to have them? Who else? Whereas we are constantly thinking we are breeding these dogs for other people. And that's one of the misconceptions, I guess, of like people who do it professionally is we're thinking about you guys. We're thinking about everybody else when we're breeding them. Whereas if you breed your own dog, you're thinking about yourself. And then that's it. You're like, oh, I really like her, but she whines and she's a pain and she doesn't listen and she's got bad eyes and whatever else. Oh, but I really like her. She's sweet. Like, well, that's not a reason. That to us, that's not a good enough reason to breed your dog. So I think more thought needs to go in from people to breed their dogs. And this is partly why we have stud dogs, but we don't kind of promote our stud dogs, because over the years, I've seen too many people coming to me with dogs, and I'm like, you shouldn't be breeding off this dog. And of course, it's their beloved family dog, and they get upset because this obnoxious guy tells them they shouldn't be breeding off it. And it's just sort of like, I just rather not have those conversations. I'd rather not upset people. So I tend to just kind of do my own thing. And if someone comes to me with a dog I've trained or we've had something to do with and go, I really like to use one of your dogs, I'll be like, okay, great. But I would be doing that because I want one of the puppies or 2 of the puppies because I really like the mum and I think she should be bred from, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Okay, so we've got Labradors and we've got Cockers in the middle, Springers. What are your views on them as a sort of general pet / working dog?
Totally underrated.
Why so?
They're just not in fashion at the moment. When I started doing this, there was, on an average year, there was 40,000 Labradors registered. There was 20,000 Springers and 5 to 10,000 cockers, and it's now 60,000 Labradors, 30 plus thousand cockers, and 5 to 10,000 litters of springers. If I had to have one dog, I'd have a springer, because they can have the on-off switch of a Labrador. They want to get it right. Cockers quite often want to get it wrong. Springers are like, I'm going to try my hardest to get it right. Even if they don't, they're trying. And they're just a really good all-round dog. And I don't have enough of them. I love them. And right now we don't have a lot of them. And I miss them. And we've just had a female come in season, and I'm really looking forward to having a litter of springers again, because they're fun. But I also love cockers, and I also love labs. So I'm the lucky one who gets to have all of them and pick and choose. But no, springers are great dogs, and I think they're like, oh, springers are more hyper, and I'm like, no, they're not. Again, get them from the right place, get them from someone who's breeding good springers and for the right purpose, and they're not. They're way easier to train than a cocker.